Oh, I can definitely make a Pokemon out of these. Long time no see, my Pokemon enthusiasts. This week we will be filling our dexes with new Pokemon from Hollow Knight Silksong. We've got a perfect mix of creepy and cute Pokemon here for you today. Now, there are a ton of different character designs in Silksong, so I had a pretty hard time choosing. But I finally settled on 3 that I think are some of my favorite designs from the game. The first enemy to get redesigned on today's docket is the Skull Scuttler. I just think they're cute. Look at this little guy. When I saw this little guy, the first thing I actually thought of was turning it more into a regional variant of Joltik instead of totally making a fresh design for a Pokemon. So my idea was to take a Joltik and put it underneath a little Cubone skull. I think that's a good idea. Originally, I was kind of going to go more for like a Spinnerack look and give it an eye pattern on the back of its butt, but I struggled with that here, as you can see, and so I ended up going with the Joltik idea instead, as I was really struggling with the anatomy of the little spider butt and the eye lining up on the Cubone skull. Plus, making the Joltik furry gives it a little more of a shadowy, shady look that would match better with the Skull Scuttler from Silksong. I know the Skull Scuttlers themselves aren't cute little fluffy little guys, but what if they were? Just hear me out. Now, for the posing, I really wanted, when we animate this guy, for him to be using one of his legs to lift up the skull and sort of peek out. Since a lot of the time in Silksong, you don't actually see the Scuttlers scuttling around. They're hidden underneath the skull. So now I guess the real question is, what region would this guy be from or come from? I'm not really sure. There's not exactly like an underground Pokemon region, since they're all based off real world places and there is no underground civilizations. So if anybody has any ideas where this Joltik could be from, let me know. If nobody can think of a region, I'm throwing him down in the underground in Sinnoh. It feels too late to put a regional variant there, but maybe no one's ever looked under the skull before. For the color pattern, I kept the skull the same as the regular Cubone skull, but I made the Joltik black and orange, a more Halloween-y vibe, for a more spooky little guy. And since this is a Joltik under a skull, I think Skulltik would make a great name. Skulltik. It flows up right off the tongue, don't you think? So here we go. Skulltik. A regional variant of the Pokemon Joltik. This Pokemon is incredibly rare to find, as it is constantly hiding underneath rocks, bones, and other things that you could find only deep underground. But don't mistake its shy nature for weakness. This predator jumps out from underneath these things to catch all sorts of prey. Yeah, I hate bugs in real life, but I think bug Pokemon are just so cute. They're so cute, right? Hollow Knight and Silksong are here to remind me that these things are not my friends. Even right down to the very first one you see, like Moss Grub. The Moss Grub is actually the first enemy you run into when you start playing Hollow Knight Silksong. So I thought it was one of the perfect ones to do for this challenge. However, its face. Oh my god, its face. I didn't know what to do for it. It's so simple. I had to give it more shape, but I did not know what extra shape to give it. But I'm happy where I settled in the end. There was a lot of conflicting emotions because I didn't want the face to end up too much like Caterpie, since they're both green little wormy guys. But we get there in the end, right? We got there. But I also wanted to add another degree of separation from Caterpie, so ultimately this little guy ends up with 0 legs. We turn that moss grub into a moss worm. I had to keep its signature grassy, sort of mossy body, as well as all the spikes that it has that come out. I also wanted to make sure I keep the face pincers that it has in Silksong and make sure those translate really well into the shape language of the face of the moss grub for the Pokemon version. I debated a while on whether or not I should make the spikes on the body each have individual movement, but ultimately decided that they would be stationary with the body, since it'd be really weird if you grew spikes or horns and they wiggled on their own. Now, the detailing on this bad boy, I ended up going back and drawing so many leaves on separate layers for animation just so the body could have more shape and look more fluid when it ended up moving. I think this is actually what took the most time on this guy out of anything I drew. I actually ended up taking a lot more inspiration from Sewaddle than I did Caterpie. I even went as far as try to snatch some of the colors there, but ended up using the colors directly from the moss grub in Silksong. I was worried the greens wouldn't translate over well into the Pokemon style, but I think they actually worked out pretty fine. One thing you might notice here is that the upper lip is separated from the rest of the face, and that is so that when we go into the animation process, we can make the little bug mandibles move. We use the upper lip to hide the upper part of the mandibles when it pinches. And it's about here where I decided to really struggle with the lighting of this bug. I didn't know if I wanted to end up actually shading each individual leaf to give this grub more texture, and I didn't know if I wanted to use a yellow lighting or a white lighting, like a more classical Pokemon style. In the end, I did not go and shade in every leaf with lighting, because that would never actually fly in the Pokemon style. I don't think there is a grass Pokemon that actually shades in all the leaves into every nook and cranny. There's a bit of an outline, but I never actually heavy details. I mainly use Sawsbuck's different seasonal forms for reference for this because they have a couple of outstanding leaves and then just a main general leaf shape. And now, moss grub. These small worms can be found in humid, overgrown caverns, where they will spend most of their days chowing down on the mossy terrain that surrounds them. They will also use this moss to coat their entire body with in preparation for the next stage of evolution, and to protect their growing wings. I love the moss grub, it looks so cute. Ah! Now this next one is a bit of a stretch for a Pokemon, but I just had to include Sherma. Sherma isn't an enemy, but he is a character, so I still think this counts. I had to. I love him. He's so cute. I mean, have you seen him do his little thing? Listen to him sing his happy little song and tell me I can't include him in this video. I must. I'm compelled to. His happy little tune takes up my entire frontal cortex nowadays. However, drawing Sherma presents a bunch of unique challenges when it comes to turning him into a Pokemon. And that is skirting the line between being able to recognize that this is Sherma and also being able to say, yeah, that's believable in the Pokemon universe. So the first thing I did to Pokemonify Sherma is take his arms and turn them from just long black points into jointed bug arms with little claws at the end of the hands to work as fingers. I kept the instrument design the exact same though for recognizability, as well as the hat. Pot? Lid? This metallic hat thing, yes. Where I think all three of these objects are believable in the Pokemon universe. Another part that stayed almost exactly the same is the cape. There are plenty of Pokemon that have semi-clothe-like features to their bodies, so why not a cape? The cape is just part of the body now. I treat the legs the same as the arms and give them a joint, and I give them a little claws on the end. I also made the design choice to give Sherma a second set of eyes because in Pokemon, even if the head shapes are round and soft, they still have a lot of design elements going on somewhere, whether it be the eyes or the mouth or a patterning of some sort. And since Sherma's head is just a ball with no mouth, I had to give extra design to help balance out the face a little bit more. That about wraps up the unique design choices I made to make Sherma look more like a Pokemon. I adjust the proportions here a little bit so that way it's more Pokemon friendly, because Pokemon tends to go for really large heads and smaller bodies now in the more modern designs. Whether it be cute little guys or like Armarouge and Ceruledge, they both have very large heads. And Sherma here is definitely leaning more towards a humanoid look, so using those two as a basis for proportions I felt was a good idea. Now, I will say, I maybe cut up this image a little too much. When it comes to animating him, we did not use every single one of the pieces I cut up here. But I didn't actually have an idea for what Sherma should be doing in the animation, so I wanted to give Volaire as many options as possible for whatever she wanted to do with Sherma. which in the end is just Sherma playing his sweet little instrument, making beautiful, beautiful melodies for us to listen to. Now, color palette wise, I do end up color picking directly from the in-game model of Sherma. The design itself really feels complete with these colors, and I didn't think I needed to add anything because he is entirely in various shades of brown and dark orange, which all comes together really well, including in the Pokemon universe. You can look at Teddy Ursa, Ursaluna, and Blood Moon Ursaluna as great examples of using the various shades of brown and oranges together to make a complete design. Now, I once again fell into my trap of over-rendering a little bit. I love rendering metal, and I just couldn't stop. So the hat and the little bell that he plays aren't quite in the Pokemon style that I am attempting to mimic, but at least it looks really, really good. So, like, can you blame me? I even ended up doing a bit of rim lighting on the body. I just love Sherma so much, I couldn't stop working on this, even though I probably should have. The end result still looks really good, even if it's not quite in the style that Pokemon would go for. And since all that's left in this process is a little bit of over-rendering on my part, let's go ahead and skip to the Pokédex entry. Meet Sherma, the musical shell Pokemon. This Pokemon travels the world in order to bring its beautiful song to all who will listen, finding whatever scraps of metal it can to bang together to make a wonderful, beautiful song that is sure to do nothing but spread joy. So what did you guys think? I really like this collection. I think these turned out really well. And what can I say? I'm a sucker for over-rendering. But with that, I will see you all in the next video. Good night and goodbye.